Welcome to Let's Learn. Today we are going to learn about the Frayer Method, and this is a great strategy to help kids learn vocabulary. One of the main problems about vocabulary is we often just test it without actually teaching it. And there's so many different words that our kids need to learn. Let's give them some help to make sure that they learn them easily and effectively. So when I say teach, not test, I mean just asking lots of questions. So you might read a book or talk about something that you saw on TV and then just barrage them with questions. What's this? Where does it live? Tell me two things about. What do you remember? What do you see? So if we just ask question after question, we are testing, not teaching. And we need to make sure that we are teaching, not just testing. So let's jump into what this looks like. On the left, you'll see a traditional Frayer Method chart. You'll see definition, characteristics, examples, and non-examples. This method helps students learn the vocabulary by helping them build their definitions. Here's another example with the top two boxes and some slightly different language. My goal with all of these strategies is to always make it more kid-friendly. So I will show you a template that I created using these terms and getting rid of some of that really complex language that might be confusing for kids. Now that you have a general idea of what this looks like, let's go to the table and I'll show you what it looks like in practice. So here we have an example Frayer model template that I've created, and this is the traditional one. You'll find definition, characteristics, examples, and non-examples. This is the original version. You will often see another version that looks like this, where instead of definition and characteristics, you have essential attributes and non-essential attributes. I prefer this one personally, and I'll get into that shortly, but these are the more traditional examples of the Frayer model. Now, I did add this box because part of this process is to activate prior knowledge, and I wanted students and you to have a place to enter that information for your brainstorming. Now, I've created a third that I find most helpful with the students that I work with, and it just simplifies a lot of the language because sometimes the language of the graphic organizer makes the task more complex than it needs to be. So here you have your brainstorming box. You have always, so this characteristic is always present. This characteristic is sometimes present. Yes, it is, and then you can fill in examples, no it's not, and you can fill in non-examples. I just find that the simplified language helps make the process a little bit easier for any level of students. For your older students, they may be more used to it, but for younger children, this is one that I find works best. So if we look at the traditional one, let's run through that first, and I'm a lefty, so I need to turn my paper here. We are going to talk quickly, to give an example, about birds. So this is our topic, which would go in the middle. And then you are going to activate the prior knowledge. So asking the child what they already know about this. So what do we already know about birds? You might get answers like they have wings, they might have a beak, perhaps feathers. You might get some funny answers like this. My grandma has one, which is perfectly fine. Keep writing everything down that they say. Even if you know it is not correct, please make sure that you're putting it in the brainstorming box. There are no right answers in this part of the process. Then they might say, okay, they lay eggs, they fly, and they're cute. So now we've done our brainstorming. At this point, you are going to do your lesson. You are going to show a picture of different kinds of birds, or a YouTube video, or read a book that talks about birds or has birds in it. So you start activating prior knowledge, you do your lesson, and then you come back to this to define it. So a big mistake that I see made often is we jump right into the lesson, we haven't activated prior knowledge, and then we just ask lots of questions. What's this? What does it do? What parts does it have? Where does it live? And that rapid fire questioning can actually shut processing and thinking down for children. So we want to make sure we're building it up and not breaking it down and making it harder for them. So after you've done your lesson, you come back. Now this version of the Frayer model has this definition box, and I am going to write a definition in here for you. I don't like this because the definition typically does not help the students that I particularly work with. It may for you. That's why I wanted to give you this option and show this option to you. So there's my definition. Let me zoom in here. A warm-blooded, egg-laying invertebrate distinguished by the possession of feathers, wings, and a beak, and typically can fly. So for some kids, this may be great, but for the kids that I work with, this is not going to be helpful. Even though we have some of the same pieces up here, that might be a way to address it. So you can say, all right, let's do a scavenger hunt. Oh, I found wings. That's up here. I found beak. That's in here. I found feathers. Because warm-blooded egg-laying invertebrate is pretty complex, especially if you're working with younger students or any child that has a language processing or a language disorder. Egg-laying, you may need to talk about, okay, egg-laying is the same as it lays eggs and can typically fly. So you would go and do that back and forth process here. Now characteristics, a lot of these are the same. So I find this really redundant. Obviously, egg laying is a characteristic, wings is a characteristic, etc. So you would pull out those pieces and write them here. Now when we go to the bottom section, examples and non-examples, this is where this model really shines. So we're going to talk about making sure that the child knows categories. So we know for sure that a bird is a goose. We know that it is a robin. We know that it is a duck. We know that an example of an animal, a non-example, would be a snake or a turtle. So even though turtles lay eggs, a turtle is not a bird. So we're testing, yes, this is true about birds, or these are examples. These are not examples. So even though these might share some characteristics, we want to make sure that they really, really understand what an example of a bird is. And that's why this model is so great to help teach vocabulary. Now let's jump to the other example here. And in this case, you lose your definition and characteristics, and they break characteristics down into two boxes. So what is essential and what is non-essential? So again, if we're thinking about birds, essential, they have to have wings, but they don't have to fly. So they might fly, but they might not. So that is non-essential. So they all have to lay eggs. And they all have to have a beak. But something that's non-essential is they eat seed, for example, because some birds eat bugs instead of seed, for example. Now, examples and non-examples would be the same. So you would sort, okay, is this an animal, a bird? Is this an animal, a bird? And you probably would be better off going through your lesson again and looking for these examples and non-examples, going on a scavenger hunt for them. Ooh, I see an animal. Is that an example of a bird or is it not an example of a bird? And go through that process that way. Finally, the third version that I've created for you here, same top box, but we've simplified the language. So it always has this. Sometimes it has this. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Again, just a little bit simpler on the language. And to make this even more accessible to your children or students who have some language concerns or some reading concerns or writing even, you can create some pictures. So I've created some pictures here to show you the yes it is and no it's not, or the examples and non-examples. So same concept, just more formal language, simpler language to help them understand the concept to start. So we would show them this, okay, a bird. Yes, it is. That's an example. A dog. No, it's not a bird. A cat. Is that type of a bird? No, it's not. How about a goose? Yes, it is a type of a bird. How about a duck? Yes, it is a type of a bird. So you've just taken a much more complex task and you've made it simpler by throwing in some pictures there. So in the comments below, take a minute and tell me which template you like the best. Do you like the traditional one with the definition and the characteristics? Do you like the essential, non-essential attributes? Or do you prefer the simplified language template? Which one do you think would work best for you? Thank you for watching. These templates are free, downloadable from my website. Click the link below to get a copy for yourself. Let's keep learning.